Conan, what do you think is best? Not to do reboots of my movies. Hello everybody, this is My Profile is Great, and I am adjusting myself into my bathtub and getting comfortable because I am about to talk to you about a really bad movie that should go down as an example of how not to do a remake of an old 1980s treasure. Conan the Barbarian is a really terrible movie that I don't even think I'm going to talk about it for that long because it just so completely destroys any interest I think that anybody could have in the Conan the Barbarian franchise in general. The 1980s film, from what I had seen, and I'll admit I didn't really see all that much of it, it was really kind of campy, cheesy fun. Like, it was really over the top, the line delivery was crazy, like, the story was kind of, like, silly, but it had that 1980s charm where, and it's not excusable, you can't excuse bad filmmaking just because it was in the 80s, but there's certain films like Labyrinth, Conan the Barbarian, and a whole bunch of other ones that I would argue they're really bad films, but there's some kind of quality that leaks through, like, of that era that helps to get you through it. Like in Labyrinth, it's David Bowie. Like in Conan the Barbarian, it's obviously like Arnold Schwarzenegger acting like totally Arnoldish. I guess there's no other way to put it. So then you enter this new one, and I'm looking at it going, wow, you're taking this like super seriously, and at the same time, it's totally ridiculous, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to be that way or not. That's the point when you know you've really entered so bad it's good territory. When you're watching a movie and you are questioning the tonal sort of choices that the director is making, you're going, okay, clearly that scene was supposed to be really funny, right? And then you look at the rest of the movie and you go, well, no, because there's all these other gory, violent things that happen that are taken dead seriously. As far as the plot is concerned, I can barely even remember it or even comprehend it. I was sort of just watching the movie, basking in the terrible performances, bad line delivery. One of the only things that I can really remember about it is that, like, Conan is going after this guy who killed his dad, and he's going to have his revenge on this guy, and this guy has this plan to, like, resurrect his dead witch wife and take over the world. It's really generic fantasy, sort of like, here's the bad guy, and he's going to do something really bad. It's not really important to what you're actually viewing. And he ends up running into this woman who is this sort of monkish character, like she had been in this monastery and trained to be pure and everything. So you kind of have this dynamic where it's supposed to be crazy hijinks, because here she is, and she's paired with Conan the Barbarian, and he's just barbaric and violent and treats his women very poorly and just like shows up at the whorehouses and has sex with everybody. And so, of course, they have this sort of philosophy clashing, which I thought, okay, at the beginning of it, this is going to be kind of interesting if they actually follow up with this angle and don't just make her a generic love interest. Like, they could constantly be at ends with each other. But no, that's what a good filmmaker would have done. What they end up doing here is basically like, you have one scene of that, and then it ends up just sort of her realizing, oh, he's really a sweet, kind person, like behind that bloody, violent, disgusting, rude interior. He's so great, like he's loyal and everything. You have the other barbarians describing him, and it's this hilarious scene where they're like, oh, that Conan, he's such a great guy. Like, he may rip out your spine and drink your fluids and kill innocent people, but you know what? He follows a code, and that's what makes him great. And I'm sitting here going, either pick one direction or the other. I don't really want to be moralized on why Conan the Barbarian is really this decent guy. if you're just going to make him this violent as hell barbarian, just make him a violent as hell barbarian. I don't need any kind of backstory about how he got there or anything. Just give me what I want, which is the gore. And the gore is the fun part of the movie. When you see people's heads get smashed into things, and you see people's heads getting taken off, and just all kinds of grisly, bloody things happen. And that's, I'll admit, from my horrible standpoint, that's actually fun. I laughed at a lot of the gore. The gore can be kind of inventive sometimes. It's just that everything else around it, including the way that the action sequences are shot, they're just not all that fun to watch until somebody's like head explodes. The final sword fight at the end, where they're kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. Okay, she's like on this wheel and she's strapped in. And then the wheel falls and falls down this cliffy thingy and she gets stuck. And then Conan and the main bad guy are fighting on this thing. And this is supposed to be like, that and the next couple of fights after it are supposed to be the big climax of the movie. And it's just so badly staged that I don't feel anything for the characters. I don't think that the atmosphere is cool. There's a lot of really obviously bad CGI. And on top of that, I can't even feel exhilarated by the action itself that's going on. And that's the ultimate failing of something like Conan the Barbarian that's just supposed to be a big action fest. If the action doesn't deliver, then the whole movie just falls apart. And on top of that, I just can't stand, and I realize it's Conan the Barbarian. I shouldn't think about it too much. But I can't stand when you have the really strong female character who's really only there to be a strong female character so that Conan can screw her, and then have this whole thing where it's just sort of like she's now become dependent on him because he's the big, strong, burly character and she's a woman. I can't stand that. I think it's a horrible cliche. It was horribly done here. I just really couldn't believe at the end where after all of that development of kind of like their relationship and everything, he basically just drops her off and says like, okay, bye, maybe I'll call you sometime. You know, that's Conan the Barbarian, clearly. That's his character, and I can understand why he would do that. But then, why bother even introducing a love interest in the first place? Why don't you just have Conan, like, going to the bars, you know, picking up some chicks or whatever, being a barbarian, and just completely cut out the female love interest entirely? Makes a lot more sense to me, but again, decisions that good filmmakers would have made, and I think, you know what, I may not be that great of a filmmaker, I'm not even a filmmaker at all, but I would have probably made a better movie than Conan the Barbarian. Mwah. Talk to you guys a little later.